Party people! I am your host, Lexi Inks, and welcome to Lex Be Real, a sex and dating podcast all about the 3 R's: real, relatable relationships. You guys, I am so excited to be back in the swing of things, back on a weekly schedule with the episodes. It feels so good to really be back in the game, back on the show, and be so committed to it for real, because especially today, I have such an exciting episode for you guys. I have interviewed Dr. Jaci Witmer, who I have also interviewed for many articles and stories that I've written over the years as a sex and relationships journalist. And she has been such a prime expert source for all things mental health, relationships, interpersonal conflict, all of those things. And she is a licensed clinical psychologist. Her practice is mostly virtual. She's based in a couple different states, and she is just the bomb diggity for real. And so today we're talking about postpartum sex and intimacy, which it's funny because a lot of you know that I'm 32 and I am extremely child-free by choice. So it's hilarious to me sometimes that I have to remind myself that 32 or even late 20s into 30s is such a normal age for people in my life to have kids, let alone multiple kids. I have several friends who have literally multiple children, and I'm like, wait, but you're a teen mom. I would be a teen mom if I had kids, but I don't want them. But anyway, I am so excited to cover this topic because it's such an important topic to talk about. I think that there's a lot of shame and stigma associated for a lot of postpartum people. And I just want to kind of destigmatize it and talk about how to navigate all the tricky things that can come along with being postpartum, especially when it comes to being in a relationship and having intimacy and having to kind of rebuild that intimacy in a new way with your new body, your new identity, this new chapter, having a new human in the mix, all of those things. So Dr. Jaci has given us so much great insight. I am literally so excited to get into this with you guys. But in the meantime, let me give you a couple updates. So my Substack has officially launched. So at the time of this episode airing, it is live, and I offer a free tier and a paid tier. So the free tier gets one weekly newsletter for free every month. And then if you sign up for the paid tier, which until May 16th is going to be $5 a month lifetime. So set for life, you will be at $5 a month if you decide to join the paid tier. And that will get you double the content. So that will get you 2 weekly articles from me a month. And that includes not only just personal essays and my cultural commentary on all things sex and dating, but it will also include expert interviews from all of the different incredible experts in my field, like Dr. Witmer. So, yeah, definitely check that out. Check out my Substack. It's called Southern Jezebel. So it's literally southernjezebel.substack.com. And again, that will be linked in the show notes for this and in my link tree in my bio and all social media platforms as well. And if you want to dive a little bit further into a lot of the topics that I cover on social media and here on Lex Be Real, you can join the Lexual Education Patreon page. The Patreon is $15 a month, and it has plenty of perks, including a once monthly office hours session where you can hop on a Google Meet with a bunch of other people and ask any questions you have in a group setting. And if you're not comfortable asking your questions in a group, you can also submit a Google form ahead of time to ask them anonymously, and I will still answer them. People won't even know it's you, but I'll answer your question anyway. So the office hours is a really great way to get more personalized advice and insight from me on all things sex and relationships. And if you're in the Patreon paid membership, you will also get a huge discount on my sex and relationships one-on-one coaching sessions. Okay, guys, I cannot wait any longer, so let's jump right into the episode. Dr. Jaci Witmer is a licensed clinical psychologist. Her practice is mostly virtual, and she's also based in DC, New York, and Florida. Dr. Jaci and I have worked on countless articles together for sites like Cosmopolitan, Bustle, Women's Health, Pop Sugar, so many others. It has been such a joy collaborating with her as an expert for all of the different articles and topics that I've covered over the years. So I am totally honored to sit down with her today and chat about all things postpartum intimacy and sex. So without further ado, let's get into it with Dr. Jaci. So, Dr. Jaci, I would really love for you to dive into your professional background as a clinician and like what inspired this career, what your primary focuses are in your practice, and what made you interested in talking about postpartum intimacy today.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I mean, I I like talking to people. I like helping people. That's kind of like I think a reason that many people get into, becoming a therapist.
Right.
Um, I really love the, kind of these huge transition periods in people's lives and helping navigate through that, right? And like wading these waters that can feel really murky and dark and scary, right? Around like career changes, relationship changes, having a child, loss, like these huge life transitions that can really shape everything. And so helping people to better understand themselves, different parts of themselves as they go through these transitions, and to not feel so alone in the process. Like that is really what I love about this work. And so I think because of that, kind of naturally like moving into the perinatal population and all things around it kind of happened naturally. And so I see that as a big part of my caseload now and something I'm really passionate about. And I really enjoy, working through with people, whether it's birthing people, partners, all different areas around it. It's really, really important to me.
I love that. Yeah, and it's like those, change and those transitions and change in general can be so scary for some people, and I think we don't pause and give that like the magnitude it deserves, that especially in those
Mm,
huge life transitions, like yeah, like you said, career, relationships, having children. I think a lot of times we tend to rush through life because we work 40 hours a week and we have to keep going, we have got bills to pay and we've got kids to take
mhm.
care of, mouths to feed, and the dishes to do. And I think that therapy is such a beautiful thing in a great way, especially like talk and individual therapy, to really process, take the time to actually slow down and talk about those transitions. So I love that that's like what really drives you as a
Yeah.
therapist. And so let's talk a little bit about your background in terms of like the commonality and just how much experience you have with talking about postpartum with different women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of probably happened sort of naturally, with my age range and
Mhm.
I earlier in my career I worked, with a lot of people in college and grad school, and that really made sense because I think that's kind of where I was too, or just coming out of that. And throughout my career so far, I've worked with a lot of professionals in different areas and walks of life, navigating a lot of career challenges, relationships within careers, all different areas around that. And I think having my own child and kind of navigating that experience myself really helped me to like understand with my clients like, wow, this is really major. And like there were times where I would kind of go back to a client I would be working with who had children before me, who I would say, well, why don't you try this, or what about this thing? And like we'd kind of talk about things that I didn't have the sort of hands-on experience and like the lived experience, right, to like say that some of those things. And so I kind of went back and was like, remember when I said that? Like I feel like that really probably didn't land they're like, yeah, that was, but I understand. And so with kind of having my own personal experience, I think that's really helped me. And obviously everyone's experience is different, and there's all these unique challenges that each person faces, but I think it
Right.
has helped me to like have a better handle and feel more equipped. And then I also did the through Postpartum Support International, did an advanced training and other, postpartum perinatal mental health trainings. So, and I did that. I, did some of that while I was pregnant. And then shortly after, I was like, oh, let me just, get all the continuing education credits I need, and also learn at the same time kind of for myself too. And so I also, lean on that knowledge too to help support my practice.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So it's like so great balanced mix of like your personal experience with it and so much professional development. And that's like really great to hear because that means we picked the perfect person to cover this topic with, obviously, especially because like I'm like, okay, I have no kids. So, and that's like not in the cards for me, which honestly is mostly by choice. So, yeah,
I
I
hear
think
that. Yeah.
I think this is gonna be, yeah, a really great, source of insight for a lot of especially, like, new moms, young moms, and even people who are maybe pregnant right now and, like, going through, like, their 3rd pregnancy and, because every single one, I'm sure, can hit a little different and, you go through different things each time. No 2 pregnancies are the same. I can only imagine. So, I love that we're chatting about this, and I love that, hopefully this can help people feel less alone and maybe remove a little bit of that shame and stigma that they might feel mentally. So speaking of, the amount of times you've seen women in your practice go through these various issues with postpartum intimacy, how common in general do you think this is?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think the current statistic is like 1 in 5
Wow.
birthing people experience either postpartum depression or anxiety. 1 in 10 partners also experience, either postpartum depression or anxiety.
Wow.
Um, and that's the diagnosis, right? But I think again, like there's all the insomnia, exhaustion, kind of anxiety that may not meet the clinical criteria for a diagnosis, but is still very present. And so, and then also thinking about other conditions, OCD, postpartum psychosis, like there's so much else to kind of think about too. And those may not be quite as common, right? They happen a lot, but they're maybe not 1 in 5. But for 1 in 5 women, to experience this, it's a lot. And so I think again, to like for women to know, okay, this is what could happen. Kind of these are kind of the signs and some things to think about, and what is normal, what may require more support. I think is good for people to know.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so glad you mentioned like all the other factors too that, a lot of people just kind of think of like postpartum depression and that's like the main thing. But you're right that even if they are like statistically less common, things like postpartum psychosis and, partners experiencing like the aftershocks and effects of watching, the birthing person go through all of that and then having their own struggles with like becoming a new parent or becoming a parent of an additional child. Like there are so
Mhm.
many different factors that can go into all of this that can affect the intimacy on both ends. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't, I'm glad you brought up the partner thing because a lot of people also don't consider the fact that it can affect more than one person or even the relationship they have with their child. Like it can,
Mhm.
it's such an important formative time for all three of them. And yeah, everyone involved. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say too, anxiety is one of the biggest predictors for reduced interest in sex, in, intimacy in the postpartum period. And so thinking too about, again, it may not be reaching the criteria for a diagnosis, an anxiety diagnosis, but the anxiety is still there, and kind of, coming from all different sources, and how that impacts sexual health, and normalizing that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And what are, I would say, some of like the most frequent situations with postpartum intimacy that you see in your practice?
What comes up a lot is the kind of like touched out experience, right? Of like overstimulation, sensory overload, babies on you all day, and
Yeah.
to even be touched lightly by one's partner can feel overwhelming. And without the words to communicate that, the partner can then feel like, my partner doesn't want to connect with me, my partner doesn't want to engage at all. And it doesn't mean, it may not mean they're looking for sex, right? But just like, my partner doesn't even want to hold my hand or cuddle. And so kind of naming that, of like, the overstimulation, the mental load, the sensory overload of being a new parent, and kind of like integrating all of that can be really challenging. And so having the words to put to that, um, I think also, like, obviously exhaustion, right? And just uh, the sleepless nights are real, and like, you know finding rest, it can be really hard. So when we're not kind of getting those baseline needs met, of like eating and taking care of ourselves, moving, resting, sex, may not be a priority. And so normalizing that too, like, things kind of take time to even out and to get better. And to, that kind of comes with like baby sleeping more, and then the parents being able to sleep more, and then
Mhm.
being able to connect and feel more comfortable doing that. But again, there's no like specific timeline, I think. And so, a lot of women or birthing people get cleared, 4 to 6 weeks postpartum. And it's really important to remember that being cleared for, exercise and sex does not equal desire, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, normalizing that too, of, okay, gradually starting to do other things that make one feel like themselves, whether that's exercising, again, like, maybe non-sexual connection around touch, and spending time together, communication, like building that back up, so that that feels really stable, and then moving into sex when one feels comfortable and ready for that. So I think that's really important to normalize too.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and I'm so glad you brought up,
Mhm.
like, anxiety being such a huge hindrance to, like, both intimacy and sex, because those 2 are not always the same thing. I think a lot of people think that intimacy
Mhm.
is just having sex, and it's not. There's so many different forms of intimacy. So when you bring up, a great point, like feeling like touched out, it's like, oh, that makes immediately my partner feel physically disconnected to me. And that, even just physical touch in general, not even in a sexual way, can be a form of intimacy. And the further distanced you are from any physical touch and closeness emotionally, all of those things are tied in a lot of ways. And so I think, yeah, it can almost feel like triggering almost to your like overstimulated brain when your partner like
Mhm.
touches you and you're like, get off of me, like I
Mhm.
can't do this right now.
Exactly.
But like you said, without being able to communicate that properly in the moment when you're like already just fried, it's like that can be such a point of contention, I think, in a lot of couples.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, to your point too, like, there could be resentment, right? Those feel like that is normal and natural. I want to like make that clear too, right? Because one
Yeah.
person, presumably just delivered a child, and the other person is hopefully, in a supportive role, but it's normal and natural to feel resentment towards one's partner. And so, and that also can be a bit of a hindrance to, sexual desire and intimacy. And so normalizing that, not letting it, we don't want it to get out of control and feel like it's a huge, burden, right? But like, it's a normal feeling. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's like, I shouldn't feel this way, or why do I feel this way? And so to normalize it, to communicate it, in gentle ways as one can, but like, right, it's important to kind of know that that is a factor. And along with the touched out feeling, it's normal to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in terms of, like, so say you had a person who just gave birth and, is dealing with, a lot of the common things that go on through postpartum, what kind of advice would you give, to, and especially to anybody listening who's, like, feeling just, touched out, under-resourced, anxious, exhausted? What advice would you give them to say, "Here's how you can start, like, kind of gaining a little bit of your sex life back," and not even just sex life, but the sense of intimacy with your partner and in your relationship? Like, what advice would you give them to kind of start that process?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would say, first, like, connection with yourself, right? Like, finding some space, whether it's a little bit of solo time or a little bit of
Mhm.
time to move your body and, have somebody else with baby, right? And like that connection with oneself, because there's all your body is so different. Everything is different, right? And so like reconnecting with this new body that you're in, and like, finding that love and that care for it is really important. And that is going to also be a building block towards intimacy and connection with your partner, right? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of a part of the process. And then with that is also communication, right? Like communicating to your partner, I recognize that we're not as connected right now. I recognize that like we have not been intimate, or that we haven't been touching or spending as much time together. Acknowledging it, naming it, and saying like, I do want to be close to you. I just don't know how right now, or I need a little bit more time. Like those can be such powerful words to say out loud, to for your partner to hear, so that they don't feel so alone too, right? I think that's a big thing that I talk to people a lot about in my practice.
Oh, that's really good. And, like, yeah, I think that that communication, like you said, is so paramount because, of course, once you kind of establish that selfhood and, like, make sure you nurture the relationship you have with yourself, and this goes for, anyone in any life situation, but especially when you just gave birth and you have, like, another human that is a part of you literally and spiritually and emotionally. I think that it's so easy to lose yourself, and a lot of moms talk about getting their pink back and, like, feeling like they're their own person at some point after, a while in postpartum. And I think a lot of women get stuck in that mindset for a while of like, I'm just a mom now. I'm just a mom now. I'm the mom to this baby. And that's, my first and only role. And I think, yeah, like nurturing, even getting 5-10 minutes alone to like do some breathing or just like scroll on your phone and, zone out for a second or journal
Yeah.
or do whatever you need to do for like any moment of self-care is so important. And also, especially if you and your partner are struggling, yeah, even just that communication of like, hey, I'm going to acknowledge this real quick. I know that we're both going through it. And trust me, I'm trying and we're going to figure this out. I think, especially in those situations where both partners are struggling and they both don't feel seen and they both are just having a hard time connecting in any way, that goes such a long way. I feel like that's really fantastic advice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because so many times I hear people say, like, I just don't want to say anything because I think it's going to make it worse. I think it's going to, it might hurt their feelings, or to name it might feel kind of scary. And it's like,
Mhm.
I hear that. And obviously, again, like every situation is different, your partner. And at the same time, I think in most cases where there's emotional safety and intimacy, to say things that are real and raw in the moment can only help to bring more closeness and connection.
1,000%. Yeah. Then that's the biggest thing is like, yeah, your partner, you know how to communicate with them. Especially, I mean, hopefully, if you're having a child with them, you know them well enough, how to communicate with them and like how they receive things better. So, no, that's
Mhm.
like, wow. Yeah, that's really profound. And I love that even though that's like such I think that's advice that a lot of people don't hear, but it's still so simple and actionable, and I think that's why therapy is so important. It's, like, giving you these actionable techniques and tactics and skills of, like, ways to communicate, especially through, again, such a big life transition, which can be
Mhm.
so difficult for so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I love that so much. Okay, cool. So, what are some ways, maybe some practical tips that you have for a couple to maintain an intimate life with a newborn? Because I know that that's like, even people who aren't necessarily struggling with like the mental health aspect of it, but they're like, how can we logistically even like make this happen?
Mhm.
Because we both want to feel intimately connected, but we've got a baby and it's, there's this other human that's relying on us. Like, what are some things you would suggest to people who really want to maintain that intimacy?
Yeah, yeah, another great question. I mean, making time for each other, right?
Mhm.
And that could come in all different forms. That could be maybe when baby's napping or sleeping, or, if one is, fortunate enough to have some help, whether that's family or, outside help, to have a few minutes to take a walk together, right? To like, I mean, what a privilege it is to take a walk with your partner, like during the day when somebody
Mhm.
else is with baby. I mean, right? Or with baby, and just having that time to just connect and talk and walk side by side together. And so, maybe watching a show together if that's more accessible, or, listening to a podcast together, whatever it might be that kind of, is a shared experience. That's kind of something that I think helps a lot of people in the beginning of like, okay, we're so focused on this little human, as we should be, right? Like that's evolutionary. That's, we're protecting them or making sure that they're okay, and then we have to take care of our individual needs. But what about our shared needs as a couple, right? As a couple first, and then also as this family that we've created. So I think really nurturing that is so important, and finding ways to spend time together is one of those ways.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a fantastic way to view it, like, as those small things like watching a show, holding hands and walking, like listening to a podcast or, doing something that you both, yeah, have a shared interest in or you are used to doing together, cooking a meal even, like, if you can,
Hmm.
like, just
Yeah.
doing, taking turns doing like, something you can do together to feel that connection and that, like, that unity, it can be such a good building block to getting back to a regular sex life as well. Because, like we both said, like intimacy isn't just sex. There's so many ways that you can build up to that, and especially this would be a great way to, yeah, just take those steps toward getting back to that kind of connection too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. That's so good. Yeah, people are gonna think I think that's such a great practical way to start, and it's so accessible, and it's not intimidating. It's not like, "Oh, get in the
Mhm.
bedroom and start playing around," like, a lot of people, I
Yeah.
think, and in some ways, what would you so this kind of leads me into, on the other end of the spectrum, what would you say to people who are postpartum and they feel pressure from their partner to start, like,
Mhm.
kinda getting back to sex, whether it's, like, once the doctor says, "Oh, you're cleared," the 6 weeks or whatever it is for different people, once they're like, "Oh, well, you can, medically do it now." So, like, would you say to people who are feeling that pressure from their partners, but feeling not quite ready?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we know pressure and desire can't coexist.
Yeah.
so so for there to be desire, for there to be intimacy, there has to be that safety, and to for the partner too. Again, like someone might experience it as pressure, right, and hear it as pressure, and they might be trying to like just express their needs and their feelings, and like, but I mean, there's also a line of like there can be pressure, and so like making sure that one feels safe in their relationship, I think is really key around that. But often, you know, partners feel like rejected, isolated, lonely themselves and really wanting to connect, right? That they're expressing their needs and their desires is coming from a place of, I want to connect, I want to reconnect and feel close to you. But it may be coming out in the form of pressure. And so I think to, again, like name that outside of the bedroom, to name it in times of like, I recognize that we're not having sex right now, and that, that used to be a really important part of our relationship, and I want to get back there. I just don't know how long that's going to take or what I need for that. And I just want to name that out loud. And maybe we could just start with cuddling on the couch, and that not the goal not being sex, and making that an expectation of just touch and together time. And so I think that's really important to have those conversations too, for both partners to feel heard, to feel, wanted, appreciated, and, to kind of move forward together in that.
Oh, yeah. Wow. And I think that in my mind, what came forward when you were, talking about the kind of pressure and desire and how those two like really don't work together well at all, is that I think when someone's expressing a need, one's guilt comes into the picture, whether it's intentional or direct, or whether it's on, just guilt that the other partner is feeling from that person. I feel like that's really when it becomes evident that it's pressure, and evident that it's not just communicating a need. It's like, oh, when like I'm feeling this strong immediate sense of guilt and shame, that's when you kind of, the red flag is raised, and it's like, okay, maybe we're not communicating our needs effectively and fairly.
Mm,
And I think so you bring up so many good points too, because as well, like one of the things that you also mentioned that I, as a sexologist and a sex educator, I'm always I feel like everyone who ever watches my content or reads my content is like, we get it. It's outside of the bedroom. All of these things have to happen outside of the bedroom. If you're trying to like engage in sex, or even like play around, or even just like be physically close in a bedroom setting, it's not going to be nearly as effective as if you're like in a neutral, emotionally safe, physically safe space. So I'm
mhm.
so glad that you brought that up, because yeah, these conversations need to be happening in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Because oftentimes it happens, somebody reaches out right before bed and is like, what about, can we try? And the answer is no, you're exhausted, or you're just not ready. And if you experience that as pressure, partner experiences that as rejection, and that builds, and those feelings build. And so to kind of avoid that kind of, you know, emotional rupture in connection, disconnection really, is to have those conversations outside the bedroom and to be proactive about it too.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredibly important. It's so, so,
Yeah.
so important for so many reasons. And then what are some non-sexual tips for like regaining that confidence around intimacy in general, and like rebuilding even sexual confidence? Like, what are some ways that don't necessarily involve sex directly, that someone who is postpartum can start kind of like rebuilding that confidence as a sexual person?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's unique for everybody, but
Mhm.
maybe starting with like taking a shower without rushing, without feeling pressured to like, I need to, be with baby in 5 minutes,
Right.
right? Like taking a little longer of a shower, or taking a walk by yourself or with baby, and just like, feeling the sun on your face, feeling, more connected to nature and the environment around you, wearing clothes that you feel good in, that you feel confident in, right? Like, and that takes time. That's it. I mean, maybe not for some, maybe some people it's like next day they feel great and like, but like, and it may not be. I always tell this to people too. Like, it may not be your pre-pregnancy clothes. Like, that may shift. Your style may
Mhm.
shift. Your what you feel confident in may shift, and that's okay. And so I think normalizing that too, and not like, oh, I have to fit into my pre-pregnancy jeans, or like that could be so toxic. And so really focusing on like, what do I feel confident in today? What do I feel good in where does my body feel good in? So I think like doing that more and feeling a bit more like this new version of yourself, maybe not back to yourself, but like back to this new version that feels confident and present and good in your body.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I feel like that's gonna hit home for so many people, especially because, like, not only does your body physically change, your hormones are so different. Your brain chemistry is different. Like, you essentially do become like a different person in a lot of ways. And even if it doesn't feel like it immediately, your body needs that time to respond. And so, in a way, yeah, you're kind of like reforming and refostering and cultivating a relationship with your new self, both physically and spiritually and emotionally, as woo woo as that sounds. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's taking the time to, yeah, like, start nurturing that, like, selfhood and, like, that sense of who you are now. Yeah, I think that's a great way to start, like, rebuilding that confidence, because once you get familiar with, okay, who am I now in this new chapter, in this new body, in this new experience, in this new transition, I think that's a really, really great piece of advice. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Good. And I want to add too, you mentioned hormones, and I didn't say more about that before, but the hormones and normalizing that and having your partner understand that too is so key in this of like prolactin. If one is choosing to breastfeed, right, and like
Mhm.
producing prolactin, which is really great for feeding with baby and for producing milk, that also suppresses estrogen, and that can, cause libido to decrease. That could cause the physical discomfort with sex, right? And so, and also anxiety, cortisol, stress hormone, right? Having more of that also means less desire, and like you're kind of fight or flight focused, your nervous system, like we said before, fried. You're focused on baby, you're focused on just kind of surviving, and so it's so understandable when those hormones are all at play for there to be less desire and lowered libido naturally.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm so glad you say, to make sure that your partner understands that, because especially in, a cisgender heterosexual relationship between a man and a woman, like, sometimes men just they're not educated on it. They don't know. And
Mhm.
unless, a doctor tells them, or the birthing person is equipped to explain that to them in a way that they can understand and validate, it's hard for them to, like, really empathize with that situation, because they're like, "Oh, like, I don't really know what's going on with your body." You can, like, say, like, "Oh, there's so much changing in my body," but until they, like, truly understand the, like, grasp the magnitude of it, it can be really hard for that to be used as a tool for communication. But I think, honestly, I think there's a responsibility on both. Would you say, like, partners to kind of understand those things that are changing and the ways that they can impact the intimacy? I think that's kind of a responsibility of both. But I
Yeah, I
think
agree.
that they need to both take that responsibility on. Yeah, especially in a heterosexual relationship. I feel like that's, so common with, like, "Oh, I'm just the dad and you can kind of, you can handle all of it. You got it. You're the mom." And I
Mhm.
think especially in our, like, patriarchal society, not to get all, like, in my feminist soapbox, but I think that's pretty common with, like,
100%.
especially, yeah, people who identify as women and who give birth to just how to kind of have to pull up by their bootstraps and deal with it, and I think
Mhm.
the more that we talk about this and bring it to light and make sure that men also feel a responsibility to understand and care for that and validate it, I think we're all going to be better for it.
I could not agree more. Yeah. And I mean, if one's partner is like really curious and is asking, and you feel, like you said, equipped to give that information, provide it, that's great. And also for it not always like the mental load, the burden to always fall on
Mhm.
the birthing person, for
Yeah.
it to, also the partner. We have so many sources of information now, right? In all different directions. And so there are ways that that partner can like get more information, understand, okay, this is what my partner is going through, or asking the doctor, right? When there are those moments like, what is what is going on in her body? Like, can you just give me like the Cliff Notes version so I can better understand that? Like that can be so meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's a great, yeah, resource to, like, advocate for yourself and your partner, and especially if you're, like, a partner listening to this and your partner just gave birth, like, definitely speak up and, attend appointments with them if you can and, like, do research together, like, make it a date night, like, watch a
Mhm.
documentary or a couple YouTube videos or, read some articles or something about, "Oh, wow, like, this explains why I'm feeling this way, and this explains why you are experiencing me and watching me act this way," and I think that could be a really great way to both connect in a shared experience like you talked about before, but also, like, gain that empathy and that validation of like, "Wow, you're really going through it. Now I can see and understand, and it's putting a lot in perspective."
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. And speaking of okay, so speaking of, like, learning more about that, about the hormones, about the ways that it can affect intimacy, are there any resources, whether your own or externally, that you recommend for, like, anyone who's listening to this who is maybe struggling with any of these things or a partner who's listening? What are some, like, resources you recommend in general for this?
Yeah, yeah. So Postpartum Support International, postpartum.net is the website. They have so many resources, a directory of therapists, local resources, local programming. It's just a great resource with tons of information. So, and good contacts there too. So I always, direct people there in terms of books and, people to follow. The book Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski, like amazing, for this.
Yeah.
And so I always, I'm always recommending that. Baby Makes Three by Gottman, like that's a great book, just kind of focused on, the couple and nurturing that relationship when baby comes. And so, that's another good one that I highly recommend. Um, and, if depending on one's delivery and birthing journey, pelvic floor PT, like we're finally getting understanding more about that. And so that as a resource if one needs, if one's feeling discomfort, if or just body goes through a lot of various trauma and different, again, like unique for each person, but like through the birth process, it's a lot on the body. And so finding resources to help with that and recovery and kind of, you know, feeling more comfortable in your body is also really important.
Oh, I love yes, those are great recommendations, and, I'm so glad that the Postpartum internationally said is an available resource, which is amazing, and I also highly respect the Gottman Institute. They do some incredible work, so I love that as well. So everyone should definitely check these resources out because I'm sure you're gonna find a lot of really insightful, helpful things. Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you so much for chatting with us because again, this is just not we need to talk about this more. We need to bring it to light. We need to name it. We need to speak it. And the more that we do, the more we can fix anything that anyone's struggling with and really start to create healthy postpartum intimacy and relationships. So I appreciate you being here so much. Tell us where we can find you, like any, digital online spaces that we can find you at.
Yeah. So my website, drjaci.com, drjaci.com. My Instagram is dr underscore jaci. And then also one of my closest friends from growing up, really, Dr. Morgan Finkel, she's a pediatrician. And we have talked a lot about coming together and creating workshops, programming for, expecting and new parents and especially moms. And so that's something that we're constantly talking about and thinking about. Haven't gotten it quite off the ground just yet because life and all the other things. We have our Instagram handle that we haven't posted much to is the Mommy Docs. So DOCS, and you can find us there. And I also recently launched a website called therapistgroups.com that is for finding consultation groups. And so I highly recommend, for all kinds of consultation groups. There's some that are focused on perinatal support and mental health care. And so it's really more for therapists to find groups and support around, because it's supervision and consultation continue throughout our careers. And often, in solo private practice, like I found myself feeling kind of like, where do I go? Where am I, like, where's my supervision group home, so to speak? And it took a while to find that. And so I kind of made this website to make it easier for people to find. And there's also an Instagram at therapist groups.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm so excited to hear about all these different projects too, because I think you partnering with Dr. Finkel, that sounds like such a important and necessary resource, especially working in tandem, like to address both sides of, motherhood or birthing and even getting that support afterwards, because you can talk to a doctor or an OBGYN or whoever, pediatricians, all you want before it happens, but then where's the support afterward? And where's, how do you balance the two of taking care of your own self and your relationship? And also, like you said, like that's why Baby Makes Three and things like that come in, because there's so many sides to this experience. That's incredible. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you guys to
Thank
launch
you.
that. So I'll definitely keep everyone updated on when that is like up off the ground, because I know that there are so many people who will benefit from that. So I love that. Wow. That's so cool.
Thank you, Lexi. Yeah, we're really excited about it. And yeah,
Good.
it's so good to hear. So thank you.
Yes, of course. Okay, so like she said, Dr._Jaci on Instagram and drjaci.com. Those are two of the great places you can find her and all of her incredible work. You can also find the articles we collaborated on together. So yeah, she's a fantastic resource. And again, if you're looking for a licensed clinical psychologist, she does virtual as well. So definitely take a look at her website, check out all of the things that she's working on. She's a very busy woman, helping a lot of different people. And yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me. I'm so glad you took the time, and I hope that everybody has learned a lot from this. I'm sure they have. So
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Lexi. This has been amazing. Such a pleasure.
all right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that incredible interview with Dr. Jaci and all of her amazing insight as much as I did. And just a reminder, you can follow me at Lexi Inks on Instagram, at Lexi Inks on TikTok. My website is www.lexiinks.com. And don't forget to check out my Substack, Southern Jezebel, and the Lectual Education Patreon at patreon.com/Lectual Education. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys later. Bye.